Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. The wind of struggle continued to sweep across the land of Ambazonia, where the fight for liberation presses on, the weight of colonial repression and a crumbling system in Yaoundé. From Kumbo to the plantations of the sea, from the corridors of international diplomacy to the daily survival of ordinary Ambazonians, the story remains the same, a people determined to reclaim their dignity, even as La République du Cameroon sinks deeper into corruption, debt, and brutality. Now, what we see today is not isolated. It is not an isolated incident, but fragments of a larger picture. The clash between a dying regime clinging to power through force and deception and a resilient people who refuse to bow under occupation. It is the story of a nation in waiting, charting its own future in the face of relentless odds. And so as Ambazonia rises and La République stumbles, one question lingers. Can a colonial empire built on lies and blood ever outlast the will of a people determined to be free? Well, this is the question that will lead us into the prime headlines of Undaunted tonight. And after that, we're heading into the full briefings of Undaunted, to stay tuned. On Undaunted tonight, we see Colonial Rampage in Kumbo as La République forces unleash terror after Ambazonian resistance strike. Buea Council's crackdown fails to revive economic activity. And of course, the Colonial President Paul Biya mortgages La République's future in billions, while Ambazonia continues to chart its path to freedom. Along the African scene, Vital Kamerhe resigns as president of the Democratic Republic of Congo's National Assembly ahead of no confidence vote. And on the news across the rest of the globe, Trump confronts the United Nations on Palestinian statehood as global momentum builds. With that, we head into the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. Kumbo, the historic heart of Buea County in the Savannah zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, has once again been turned into a theater of colonial brutality. On Sunday, September 21st, the Ambazonian State Army struck against occupying forces of La République du Cameroon, leaving one colonial soldier dead and two injured in an IED operation in retaliation. The colonial army descended on the civilian population in violence and destruction. By Monday, Kumbo was under siege. La République's occupation forces went on a rampage, killing two innocent civilians, leaving one critically injured and unleashing widespread looting and arson on local homes. In a grotesque show of impunity, the colonial soldiers opened fire indiscriminately in Kumbo Square, killing 23 goats, including tethered and stray animals, acts that residents say symbolize the senselessness of La République's military terror. Now, for the people of Kumbo, this was not just another attack. It was a reminder that under colonial occupation, no life is safe, not even livestock. The once peaceful town has now been forced into a state of constant fear as families flee their homes or remain trapped under the shadow of daily atrocities. The war between the Ambazonian State Army and La République du Cameroon's occupying forces is rooted in decades of annexation, marginalization, and systemic exploitation of Ambazonians. While the Ambazonian State Army continues to assert the right of the Ambazonian people to self-determination, the colonial regime responds with massacres and collective punishment, proving once again its disregard for human life. Now, despite the violence, Ambazonians remain resolute. As one resident put it, they can burn their houses and kill their animals, but they cannot kill their spirit. The land of Ambazonia will never bow to colonial rule. The situation in Kumbo remains tense, with residents calling on the international community to recognize the occupation for what it really is, an ongoing crime against humanity, and to hold La République accountable. Until then, Kumbo and the wider Savannah zone will continue to resist under fire, carrying forward the cry for liberation. Now, still ongoing within the struggle for liberation, we see that the Mile 17 motor park in Buea remains shut, crippling economic activity in the area. Now, despite the council's effort to revive businesses, shops and travel agencies remain padlocked, disrupting the livelihood of many. And the Buea Colonial Council, led by dictator Mayor David Mafani Namangue, he enforced the closure in response to the park's compliance with a 2-week armed gang lockdown. Now, an unidentified armed imposed a lockdown to run from September 2nd to October 14th, 2025, with numerous threats against defaulters. Now, despite the rejection of the lockdown by the Ambazonian government, the population, out of fear of the unknown, decided to stay indoors. The prolonged shutdown has resulted in significant economic hardship for business owners and residents, saying they're struggling to make ends meet. The council's action have only made things worse for them. The situation is further complicated by the council's selective enforcement, with some questioning why the mayor expects business owners without protection to open their shops while he moves under heavy colonial army protection. Now, residents are calling for a more nuanced approach to addressing the complex dynamics at play in Buea. We need a solution that considers our safety and economic well-being, said a resident. The Buea Council's action has sparked debate, with many questioning the motivations behind the shutdowns and seeking a more effective solution to revive economic activity in the area. Well, as the presidential electoral circles drags on in La République du Cameroon, La République, Paul Biya has once again proven why the colonial system he embodies is nothing but a sinking ship. On Monday evening, the 91-year-old strongman signed 4 new decrees authorizing loans that plunge his country deeper into debt, over 160 billion francs CFAs in a single stroke of the pen. The decrees reveal the reckless priorities of Yaoundé, which is 107.4 billion francs CFAs for phase 2 of a certain Bachenga-Ngundere road, a project riddled with corruption and kickbacks, a 6.4 billion francs CFAs for Planet, a so-called electrification program that has left even the capital in darkness, 47.06 billion francs CFAs, and another 4.6 billion francs CFAs borrowed from Standard Chartered Bank of London, allegedly for palm oil, margarine and rubber processing plants at the once thriving CDC, an institution stolen from Ambazonia and run into the ground. Now, while Biya mortgages the lives of unborn generations, he himself continues to flee to Switzerland for medical treatment and leisure, far removed from the hardship his regime inflicts on the peoples of the Cameroons. Now, this is the reality of La République's governance, a system of debt, corruption, and decay. For Ambazonians, it is clear these decrees carry a different meaning. They are yet another reminder that under colonial annexation, Ambazonia and its land, its resources, are exploited while decisions are taken in Yaoundé without Southern Cameroon's consent. They are also proof that La République's future is already doomed under its type of governance, a failed state sustained only by repression and loans that serve no genuine purpose. This is why Ambazonia continues to fight. Ambazonia's struggle is not just about resisting occupation, it is about ensuring that their own future is not mortgaged away by a dying regime. While Biya signs away billions, Ambazonia builds the spirit of self-determination, charting a path to freedom and dignity, one that reclaims its sovereignty, one that La République can never take again. Well, that is it on the Home Front report. We head on to the news across Africa. Well, on the African scene, we see that in a surprising political development in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Vital Kamerhe has resigned from his position as president of the National Assembly. The announcement was made Monday evening by the Assembly's first vice president, just hours before lawmakers were scheduled to vote on a petition seeking Kamerhe's removal from office. Addressing the chamber shortly after the announcement, Kamere presented his resignation as a selfless act aimed at preserving national cohesion. I am stepping down not out of fear or pressure, but as a sacrifice for our country. He told fellow lawmakers, it is time we redirect our energy to the real challenges facing our nation: unity, sovereignty, and economic progress. The petition to oust Kamere stemmed from internal disputes related to the management and functioning of the National Assembly. Although specific details of the grievances have not been officially disclosed, sources within the Assembly suggest that tensions had been building for weeks while growing dissatisfaction over leadership style, procedural transparency, and alleged inefficiencies. Kamere's decision to resign appears to be a strategic move to avoid a divisive vote that could have deepened rifts within the ruling coalition and potentially destabilize the legislative body. By stepping aside, he sought to prevent what he described as a dangerous distraction from the priorities that matter most to the Congolese people. Vital Kamerhe is a veteran politician and influential figure in Congolese politics. Formerly a close ally and chief of staff to President Felix Tshisekedi, he has played a significant role in shaping the current government's legislative agenda. His departure from the top post in the National Assembly may signal a shift in the internal dynamics of the ruling coalition, as well as the broader political landscape ahead of upcoming elections. Now, while Kamere's future in politics remains uncertain, his resignation may open the door for renewed dialogue and reform within the legislature. Lawmakers are now expected to begin the process of selecting a new president for the National Assembly, a decision that will likely have lasting implications for governance and political stability in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And with that, we head on to the news across the rest of the globe. Well, on the foreign scene, United States President Donald Trump addressed the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, delivering a combative speech that rejected growing international recognition of a Palestinian state and challenged United States allies on issues ranging from climate change to immigration and Russia's war in Ukraine. The high-level gathering marking the United Nations' 80th anniversary comes as the Middle East conflict and the war in Ukraine dominate global concerns. France formally recognized a Palestinian state on Monday, joining a growing list of nations pushing back against Washington and Israel's opposition to unilateral recognition. Trump warned that granting statehood at this moment would embolden Hamas, framing the move as a reward for the militant group's October 7th attacks. His stance highlighted the widening rift between the United States and European powers such as France and the United Kingdom, which argue that recognition is a necessary step towards reviving a two-state solution. Well, let's take a look to Trump's remark here.
We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities, including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they have taken so much, this could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now.
Well, the president, who spoke for about an hour, used much of his time to question the United Nations' effectiveness and to reiterate long-standing criticisms. He described climate change as a costly deception, condemned immigration policies in Europe as destructive, and accused NATO members of indirectly funding Russia's war effort by continuing to purchase its energy exports. Still, Trump ended on a conciliatory note, urging nations to work together for a brighter and more peaceful planet. The United Nations Summit continues this week with speeches from leaders including Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan, France's President Emmanuel Macron, Jordan's King Abdullah, and South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung. And with that, we've come to the end of today's broadcast. But before we go, let's take a quick look at the recap of Undaunted tonight. On Undaunted tonight, we saw on the home front the Colonial Rampage in Kumbo, La Republic forces unleashing terror after Ambazonian resistance strike. We also saw Buea Council's crackdown failing to revive economic activity, and Biya, President Biya mortgaging La Republic's future in billions, while Ambazonia charts its path to freedom. Now, on the African scene, we saw Vital Kamerhe resigning as president of the Democratic Republic of Congo's National Assembly ahead of no confidence vote. And on the news on the rest of the globe, we saw Trump confronting the United Nations on Palestinian statehood as global momentum built. With that, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight. Thank you for joining in. Before we go, we'll leave you with ABC TV, Amba TV images.